All right. Are we live? Let's see. Is my mic working? I don't know. Hello, Mike. Are you working? Let's figure this out first. I've got nothing on the mic. Hello. Hello. Testing. All right. How are we going to handle this? What about now? Let's see. Unplug and a replug. What we got? Nope. Here we go. We are in. All right, you should hear me now. I was having a little mic problem there. I don't know how that's going to look on the other end. We'll see. All right, welcome to Season 1, Episode 4 of Boat Talk. It's just me today, and it's Sunday, December 18th. It's not super easy to get a co-host when I don't have a very popular show yet. And who knows if this show will ever get popular. So for now, I'm just going to have to host it alone. And I had a little trouble coming up with a topic today. So I was debating between talking about electronics, radar, autopilot, seakeepers, or talking about self-starting in boating, teaching yourself versus taking lessons, talking about how to give yourself lessons, how to improve. But I went with getting stopped by the Coast Guard because I think it's fun, and I do have a few stories and some things we can take away. You can take away from my bad experiences. But anyway, on the crazy chance that someone is watching this, the number is on the screen. It is a call-in show, and I am live. So if you see the number, call in. Ask me anything you want about boats. The number is 727-201-3086. And the goal eventually is to get to an hour and a half, but likely this is going to be a 30-minute show. Mostly because if I'm not getting callers, then I'm just not going to ramble for an hour and a half. That would drive me crazy. But I think I have enough for 30 minutes. So anyway, the topic today, getting stopped by the Coast Guard, I'm just going to cover what has happened to me and maybe things that I could have done better or things that you can do to make it smooth. How to be legal. Oh, and I have a list of requirements. And this is on my website as well. If you don't know my website, it's captaindayun.com. I want to put that on there. I think I can. Oh, yes. Yep, there's my website on the screen. And I don't think you can find it on mobile, but if you go to the very bottom of the homepage on a desktop or tablet, you should find a link that takes you to a boating quiz. And on that page has all the safety requirements. But I just get them from the Auxiliary Coast Guard page. So anyway, let's get started. I'm going to start by reading some of the rules. I promise this won't be too monotonous. The Coast Guard has 15 rules, and we'll just go through them real quick. Number 1 is display of numbers. So your FL numbers if you're in Florida, or your whatever your state numbers are, OR if you're in Oregon. And then next to your FL numbers, you need your registration sticker. Just like on your license plate on your car, you need that registration sticker. It works the same way. Number 2, registration, just to have it on board. Just like your car, you have your white paper registration, and on a boat, same thing. Number 3, PFDs, life jackets. There's all different kinds, but you need to have a life jacket for everyone on board. And there are adult, youth, youth, child, and infant. I think I get all those. So you obviously should not be using an adult life jacket for a kid. I believe the Coast Guard will have an issue with that. Visual distress signals. So most people know them as flares or strobes. I have a strobe on mine. We'll go over that. Next is fire extinguishers. And depending on the size of your boat, you're going to need more or less. Number 6, ventilation. That is a blower. Or, wait, no, is that a blower? That is a, built after 1980, you need a powered ventilation system, so a blower. Number 7, backfire flame control. That'll be on your intake on gasoline engines only, I believe. Yep, gas engines. This is so that your spark plugs are creating don't come back out the intake and explode your gasoline fumes. Number 8, sound producing device. I have a horn. Most people have an air horn. You can have a few different things, but we'll go over that. Navigation lights. You do not need lights if you only boat during the day, but if you get caught out at night by accident, by a breakdown, you have to have lights. Number 10 and 11 are placards. That's your pollution, and they call it the MARPOL placard. I don't know what MARPOL is, but that's your trash. It talks about how far out you need to be to dump trash overboard. Number 12, marine sanitation devices. If you are within a certain distance from land, you need to have your toilet, if you have one, set up to go to your holding tank or locked in the locked position rather than just being able to dump it overboard. Number 13, you have to have a book, navigation rules. That's only for boats 39.4 feet or longer. Number 14, they just say state or local requirements. So skip that. 15, overall vessel condition. Now I like this one because let's say that you have all your other ones, you're totally legal, except you've got wires, live wires hanging in bilge water, and things that shouldn't be greasy, like things that should be dry, like steps. Say it's unsafe conditions for passengers. They can get you on item 15, which is overall vessel condition. And they say deck free of hazards and clean bilge, safe electrical and fuel systems, and safe galley and heating systems. Okay. So, I'm not going to go over too much of the rules because they're super boring. But I'm going to tell you what the Coast Guard does actually look for in reality. If they actually followed this list, we would all be screwed, all of us. I don't care what kind of boat you have and how good a condition you keep it in. I'm sure you're breaking the rules somewhere. I say that, okay, maybe there's a couple boats that are following all the rules perfectly and applaud to you. But I could probably get caught on something. What could I get caught on? I know I have the pollution placard. I don't know where my MARPOL trash placard is. I do have my backfire flame control. Oh, my blower does not work. It's not worked since I bought the boat, and it should. So there you go. I'm not legal. Now, is the Coast Guard ever going to check my blower? I doubt it. Okay, so here's how generally a stop goes. I've been stopped maybe 5 or 6 times by the Coast Guard in my career, which that's 11 years, so not that much. And I've been stopped by Customs and Border Patrol once, and I don't think the police or sheriff, which they do have boats out there, I don't think they've ever stopped me. So the Coast Guard, generally what they're going to do is they're going to roll up on you. And as they're rolling up, they're already looking for item number 1, which is your display of numbers, your FL numbers, and your registration sticker, right? So the color changes every year. So, if, like 2022, if it's red, they're probably going to be able to spot that. If they see a green one, which is 2021 or whatever the color was, they're going to know that you're out of date. So they're rolling up, they're checking your numbers, and then they're going to say, hey, my name's Bob with the U.S. Coast Guard, and we're just going to do a quick safety check. Who is the operator of the boat? And the captain will make themselves known. And if it's a really small boat, sometimes they won't even step on board. They're just going to tie up next to you. They're going to tell you to leave your boat in neutral, leave your engine in neutral. And they have a clipboard in front of them, and they're going to go down the list. But they're going to skip things. I haven't seen... Oh, actually, I do have one of their yellow slips not on me. We can go over that another time. We can find out what's really on that list because they give you a copy when you're done. So they're going to say, okay, I see that you have 7 people on board and 1 child. Let's see your life jackets. So you need to pull out 7 life jackets plus the kid life jacket. And so they're definitely going to check your life jackets every time. Flares, that's item number 4. They have checked my flares 1 time. Okay, normally that's something that they're going to skip. And it just depends on who you have pulling you over, how thorough they want to be. But out of the 5 times or so that I've been pulled over by the Coast Guard, 1 of them has ever checked my flares. Fire extinguishers, same thing. 1 time, and it was probably the same one. They checked my fire extinguishers. And I don't even think they pulled them off the rack. You know, they have a date on the bottom of the fire extinguisher, and you're not supposed to use it after, I think it's 7 years, or someone correct me. But they just want to see that I had it. They didn't even check that the gauge was in the green. They just want to know that it was there. Number 6, ventilation. Like I said, no one has ever checked that my bilge blower worked. Number 7, backfire flame control. No one has ever checked that. All they'd have to do is open up that engine hatch, look in there to see if it was on the intake. They've never done that. Sound producing device, item number 8. Yes, 1 time they asked me if I could blow my horn, press the button. It was the built-in horn, and that satisfied them. Navigation lights. 100% of the time that you get pulled over at night, they're going to care about this. Because it is legitimately dangerous to be out there without lights. There's a lot of boats that don't have radar. Most boats probably don't have radar. So if you've got 2 boats that don't have lights, you're looking at a pretty bad accident that could happen. So yes, they're going to check those. And just before I go on from that one, sailboats are required to have, a rear-facing white light when they're under sail and a red-green on the bow. But as soon as they turn that engine on, then that white light that was facing the stern needs to be an all-around because now they're a power boat. I doubt the Coast Guard is going to care much about that. If you're on a sailboat and you're under engine power, if you have your regular sailing lights up, your rear-facing white light, I think that they're going to be pretty happy that you have lights at all. So even though they are picky that your lights need to be working, I don't think they're so picky that they're going to say, oh, hey, look, you're a sailboat under power, you have to have your power lights. And there's other lights on a sailboat. There's the, sorry, I'm blanking. I'm thinking of steaming light, which is the alternative to turning on your all-around white light. One thing I was going to mention, some sailboats have two sets of lights. They'll have a mast light at the top, which is your all-around white and your red-green, and then they'll also have red-green on the bow and your white stern light. Why do they do that? Probably because when the boat was built, it had the regular deck lights installed, and then when someone redid their mast or their mast lighting, they added the all-around white light to the top. And then maybe they wired it in to where everything turns on. I think the Coast Guard would just be happy to have more lights. Even though that's not legal, the chance of them writing you a citation for having too many lights is very low. And actually, I did get stopped for having too many lights. I'll get into that. Anyway, let's move on from navigation lights. Placard. So I've been checked for a placard a couple times. Once on my boat, and then my buddy Max, they checked for a placard on his boat, and that turns south. I'll get into that. The Marpole trash placard, same thing. Been checked for it once. Most of the time, they don't care. Marine sanitation devices. This is having your toilet hooked to a holding tank. Never. Never have they checked that the toilet is in a locked position to the holding tank. Kind of wish they would, because it would make our waters a little less polluted. Navigation rules, the book. Same thing, been checked for one time. But also, I don't do a lot of boating on boats over 39 feet anymore. That was a thing of the past. Sometimes I still do, but not so much. And then items number 14 and 15, state and or local requirements and overall vessel condition. No one's ever mentioned that. No Coast Guard member has ever mentioned that. All right, so let me just backtrack and tell you a little story. So this is about 7 years ago. I had just gotten my captain's license, and a very good friend of mine, Max, he lived on his 40-foot Dufour sailboat down in Sarasota Bay. And he said, come on down, I'm going to take you for an evening sail, it's going to be beautiful. I hadn't seen him in a few months because he used to live in St. Pete, he moved down there. His brother was in town, he told me to bring my friend. So, we go down, get on his boat, we're out for a night sail, and sails are up. And something I've noticed over the years is that the Coast Guard generally tends to avoid pulling over sailboats with their sails up because it's a hassle. The reason that we got stopped was because there was no one else on the bay, and I imagine that these members of the Coast Guard, it was their task to do random safety checks that night, and there was just no one to check. So they had to stop us. So they pull up alongside of us. Now on a power boat, the first thing you want to do is just go to neutral, and you're going to let them come to you. But on a sailboat, you can't quite go to neutral. You have to pull your sails down. So what we did was we just held our course, and they came next to us, and they said, hold your course. Okay, we're already there. And they said, we're going to get close to your boat and send somebody aboard. So just stay steady. So Max holds the wheel or puts the autopilot on. I don't remember what he had at the time. And the boat comes close, and they drop off one of the guys, or I think they drop two people off. So everybody's in the cockpit. The four of us are in the cockpit. The two Coast Guard members are in the cockpit, and they pull out their clipboard and they say, hi, I'm so-and-so, the Coast Guard, we're going to go over these items. And so they start going over them. Life jackets. And so I think it was me that went down below, and I brought the life jackets and showed them, okay, we have at least four. Good. And then they say, okay, let's see your fire extinguishers. Okay, so we found, looking through the boat, because Max didn't get stopped by the Coast Guard very much, so he didn't know exactly where everything was. So it took him some time. Okay, we found the fire extinguishers. Okay, where are your visual distress signals? Where are your flares? So, okay, we had to look for those. We found them. And then, let's see your sound producing device. Okay, you got your air horn. Max blew it for them. They're satisfied. And they're going down the list, and they're not hitting everything, right? They're hitting just some selective things. And then they get to the pollution placard. And we don't know where it is. Generally, these placards are about, 5 inches by 7 inches. They're not that big. And the manufacturers put them on the boat right after the boat is built, and they generally never move. And they're often under a lid or under a hatch. So Max had never really paid attention, and he doesn't know where they are. And so he says, well, let me look for them, and we're opening hatches, and we're looking for this placard. And the female Coast Guard member, she says, well, I'll help you look, with all good intentions. She says, I'll just help you. And so she puts her clipboard down, and she's looking under the hatches, and she's inside the boat. And the next thing we know, she comes up to the cockpit where we all are at that moment. And she's got a little plastic Tupperware box, and she says, whose is this? Well, it was Max's. It was marijuana. And, this is 7 years ago. Marijuana's tolerable, but we're still on federal waters being stopped by a federal agency. So it's not the best thing to get caught. So everybody stays quiet. Actually, I think I said, what is it? I don't know, what is that? And she says, it's marijuana. And I said, it's not mine. And everybody denies it, including Max. And she makes us sweat for a minute, and Max is probably realizing that he's going to have to fess up because, first off, he can't let his friends go down for his pot. So after about 5 minutes, Max tells her, it's mine. So she dumps it out in front of us. She tells us all to watch, and she goes to the back of the boat. She dumps it in the water. And then she wrote him a citation, and she got everybody's IDs except mine, because I said, I don't have my ID on me. It's in my car. I'll go get it for you if you want after we dock. But then she never asked for it, so she didn't get my ID. I was actually very worried because I was a new captain, and I was just pulled over by the Coast Guard, and drugs were on board. So even though it wasn't my boat, because I'm a licensed captain, I thought, this is going to come back on me, and this is not going to be good. But I'm glad that she never got my license. Anyway, Max ended up getting a citation on the spot. Now, the numbers are going to be way off. Well, hopefully not way off. They're going to be off. I think his original citation was for a few hundred, maybe 300, but then later he got hit with another $700 ticket like a month down the road. And he didn't contest it, he just paid it. I don't know if we ever found that placard. Max should let me know. Not that he will ever see this. If he knows where his placards are. Okay, so that was one of the stories. That was the one I was most nervous about, just because there were drugs on board. Max is now in a very pot-friendly state, so we don't have to worry about him anymore. The point of that, the reason I'm telling this story is, first off, because I like telling stories. I like telling boating stories. And number two, I'm just letting you know that just because on the Coast Guard sites you're going to find these 15 rules, the Coast Guard is going to go over only a few of those, only the important ones. The chance that they're going to go over all 15 is incredibly low. The chance that they're going to look for the big ones, which are life jackets, sound producing device, visual distress signals, your registration, and your fire extinguishers, that is a much higher chance. That's common, but probably the most common that they're going to check is our life jackets, lights if it's at night, sound producing device, and that might be it. Those are probably the most common ones, and you should always have those, especially those, ready. But if you can do all 15, great. Anyway, I want to tell you another story, and maybe this will help you. You'll figure out why. Okay. One of my very first deliveries was a 49-foot Geno or something, Beneteau, going from St. Petersburg, Florida, to Key West. And I took my buddy David along for the ride. And so we are offshore. If you come out of Tampa Bay and you head 180 degrees south, you're going to run almost right into the Northwest Passage to Key West. And the further you go, like right out of Tampa Bay, you're going to be right next to Sarasota. And then land is going to kind of curve away as you go south. And you get further out, further offshore, and then eventually you're going to lose cell signal. And by the time you are off of about Fort Myers, you're too far from land to pick up any cell signal, and you're almost too far to see land. Once you pass Marco Island, you're totally out of sight of land. So David and I are out there past cell service range, and we're having a great time because we're on our own. I'm getting paid for this job. This is exciting, and we took our clothes off. Okay. And we were very respectful of the owner's boat. We didn't put our rear ends on their cushions or anything that they would touch. But we're standing up, walking around the deck, and we're free spirits. We're having a great time. I had a couple of guys, making jokes. And here comes the Coast Guard. And the first thing that David does is run down below into the cabin to grab his clothes. But I thought that was a bad look because they might think that we have something to hide. So I just said, you know what, I'm just going to own it, and I'm just going to stay naked. And by the way, they came out of nowhere. I was paying attention to going forward, but the Coast Guard just all of a sudden, you would think that I would see them 100 miles away, not 100, but 10 miles away, and say, what's that boat getting closer? But it was incredible how they are just arrived on us almost out of nowhere. So I stay at the helm, I keep my hands where they can see them, and it was a fairly large Coast Guard boat, and there must have been about 7 or 8 guys, as far as I can tell they were all men, hanging off the side of the boat as they approached us. And so they bring their boat, and they're about, 30 feet away from our sailboat. Sails are up, we're on autopilot, and they get close enough and they say, "Hey, U.S. Coast Guard!" And I'm facing them. I have no shame. I'm staring them right in the eye with my naked body. And they said, "Where are you headed?" And I said, "Key West." And they said, "Where are you coming from?" I said, "St. Petersburg." And they looked at the boat. And they looked at me, up and down, and they said, "See you later." They didn't want to have anything to do with us naked boys. So let that be a lesson to you that if the Coast Guard is rolling up, take your clothes off. They might not want anything to do with you. Women, I don't think this is going to work the same. It might be the opposite effect, but you let me know how that goes. David and I had a good laugh about that, and that was the fastest Coast Guard check I've ever had. Let's see. Oh, I want to fast forward to another one. So I used to do a lot of deliveries. Right now I do mostly charters. We go to Egmont Key, Bunce's Pass, Anna Maria. But when I started out as a captain, I was moving boats. Oh, I need my boat moved from, Key West to New York or Tampa to Miami, whatever it was. I would take a boat just about anywhere. And I was on a modern boat, probably a boat that was within the last 2 years old, and just a generic brand, probably a Geno. And I was going, who knows where I was going, but I know I was in the Gulf Stream, so I was just below Key West, headed towards Miami. And by the way, there is a wonderful current called the Gulf Stream that runs, well, I don't know exactly where it starts. I think it starts just south of like the Cayman Islands or over by Mexico, the Yucatan Peninsula. And it's like a conveyor belt, like the moving sidewalks at the airport. And it moves underneath Key West, south of Key West, up by Miami, and eventually dissipates somewhere near North Carolina. But if you can hop in that, you get a nice extra 3 to 5 knots of current. That helps. So anyway, we're in that Gulf Stream where we're starting to pick it up. And, Cuba is just south of us. And we're away from land a little bit. But apparently there's a lot of drug smuggling or people smuggling between Florida and Cuba. So that's a hot area. So this is nighttime, and I had my mate with me, Sarah. She was on that trip. And I got the autopilot going. Sails were probably up. And here comes a boat, and it didn't look like a Coast Guard boat. Now, I already have paranoia with this. If anybody rolls up on me out there on the water, my first thought, if it's not the Coast Guard, is they're going to kill me. Because it's a lawless land. If I'm out there 10 miles offshore, what am I going to do? Call the police? If I call the police here in this house, they could be here in, less than 5 minutes. On the water? I don't know how long. Half an hour? An hour? By then, my head is severed, and my abductors have done what they wanted with me. So anyway, this boat rolls up. I can tell it's not a Coast Guard because of the shape of it. And it's Customs and Border Patrol. I can finally see when they get close. And I'm relieved because I'd much rather have them. And same thing, they said, hold your position. We're going to send somebody on board. So this guy comes aboard, and he just has a different demeanor than the Coast Guard. He's very serious. And from what I recall, he wanted to see the registration, and he wanted to check the boat for whatever it's carrying. So he didn't check my sound producing device, my flares. He didn't check my fire extinguishers. Checked the registration of the boat, and then he came down into the cabin and started opening floor panels. And he didn't do this for the whole boat. I think it was like 1 or 2 panels. But I think he was looking for drugs or anything else I might be smuggling. And once he realized that I didn't have anything hidden below the floorboards, he said, "See you later." That was one of the most simple stops ever. But it was also eye-opening to see how different it was to be stopped by Customs and Border Patrol than the Coast Guard. That was the only time I was stopped by Customs and Border Patrol, as far as I remember. Just a reminder, if anyone is listening, this is a live call-in show. I'd love to take your questions. The number's on the screen, 727-201-3086. If you have any questions about boating, I am a 100-ton master captain. I've been a captain for 7 years, which isn't that long, but I've learned a lot because I've been on the water almost every day for those 7 years. I've moved all kinds of boats, sail, power, small, large, jet, outdrives, inboards, outboards. So I do have a lot of knowledge. and I'd love to take your questions. So if you're seeing this, call the number, ask me something. Right now it's 5:05. I'll probably go another 5-10 minutes. I do just want to mention a couple other things. When you get stopped by the Coast Guard, and let's say you pass, like you have everything they wanted, or maybe you were missing something, but they didn't make a big deal about it, they're going to write you out. They're going to give you a yellow slip of paper. If they don't give it to you, make sure you ask for that, because that yellow paper is your ticket to almost not being pulled over again for a year. Doesn't mean they can't stop you or board you, but it reduces the chance. If you have that yellow slip and you get pulled over again, you show them the yellow slip. If you were marked poorly for anything, like they were missing a fire extinguisher, the current Coast Guard members are probably going to say, do you have that other fire extinguisher now? Did you get it fixed? And you can say, yeah, it's right here. Here's my second one. And then they'll probably buzz off. But they might still check you. Let's say they're doing training and they have somebody on board that just needs to learn, go over all the rules, then they can stop you and board you again. But the chance is greater that they're just going to say, okay, you've been boarded in the last year, and this slip says you're good. Have a nice day. That's happened to me, I think, once, maybe twice, but once for sure. And my client was on board. I was on a lesson, and he was very impressed. I thought, yeah, I got my stuff in order. One other thing I would like to mention about getting pulled over is, I'll just tell you a story. I threw a boat party, and it was a nighttime. This is like 11 at night, right off of downtown St. Pete, just a mile off the pier. And I had a disco ball. I had 16 or 17 people on my boat. Now, if you know my boat, it's a Regal 27. It's 28 feet long. That's tight to have that many people on board. Now, maybe it was 15. It was somewhere between 15 and 17 people. And so before I left, I made sure I had life jackets for everyone, because I knew the rest of the boat was legal. It was the life jackets. I always keep 12 life jackets on board, so I just needed a few. So the Coast Guard comes by, and we got people in the water swimming, and we got people on the boat, and my friends are starting to realize, hey, there's the Coast Guard. Are we in trouble? And I just said, don't worry, guys. We're not doing anything wrong. Everybody just be quiet. Let me handle this. So as they get closer, they say, who's the owner of the boat? And I say, it's me. And they say, okay, we're just going to go over and do a safety check. So they come on board, and they check me for my life jackets, because I got a lot of people. And then they did not check me for, and they checked the lights because the lights were on. They didn't check me for anything else. No sound producing device, no visual distress signals, no fire extinguishers. They cared about the life jackets, but then they cared about if I was drinking. So obviously they see this party, there's lights, there's people swimming, there was alcohol on the boat. So they want to make sure the captain is good to operate. I didn't have anything to drink. But the Coast Guard member, I don't know his name, doesn't matter, he gets close to me and he says, how much have you had to drink? Now keep in mind, everybody around me is drinking. I said nothing. And he says, can't remember his exact wording, he says, yeah, but how much have you had to drink? It makes me think that they're trained to just push you, even if you're not showing signs of intoxication, because you're probably just going to confess to drinking under pressure. But I said, I haven't had anything to drink. And then he said, I smell it on your breath. So I think this is just another intimidation tactic to get you to confess. But I looked him in the eye and I said, that's impossible because I didn't have anything to drink. And you could tell immediately that he backed down because he didn't get me. He didn't get me to self-confess. But he did run some sobriety checks. He says, okay, I'm going to do the pen, follow the pen with your eyes. And I did that. And then he said, where are the drugs? I think he's implying marijuana because next I said there are no drugs on the boat. And he said, I can smell it. And I just say to him, there are no drugs on the boat. And I think that's all it took was just he needed to ask twice, and he needed to hear me say there are no drugs twice, and he was good. So he backed down off that, and at that moment, we were good. He says, all right, you're all set. And they left. So the Coast Guard is very aware of people drinking and boating, which is a big problem. Please don't do it. And so they will be, their drunk senses will be tingling, looking for you alcoholics. I don't boat and drink. That's probably why I have all good reviews. But if you boat and drink, you are putting a big risk on your passengers and your boat. I used to work with a guy over at John's Pass, and he was drinking and boating years after I worked with him, and he ran over a jet ski with his boat, and he killed the guy. The guy was visiting. And that's the kind of stuff that can happen, and I'm really glad it's not going to happen to me. All right, hey, look, we are almost at the 45-minute mark. I had enough to talk about for 45 minutes. I like this topic. Why? Because it's always fun to talk about the law and how you're hiding from the law, running from the law, getting stopped by the law, or impressing the law for doing things right. So anyway, I'm going to try to be in front of my computer every Sunday from 4:30 to 6, or 4:30 to the time I get bored, until the end of time, or I hate doing this anymore. But I want Boat Talk to be a success, and in order to be a success, I need viewers and I need callers. So we'll see how that progresses over time. I'll try to come up with a fun and interesting topic next week. But anyway, thanks for watching. See you next week.